Brownfield is the largest agricultural radio network in the country, delivering relevant news and information from across the state, region, nation, and world that Midwestern farmers want and need every day. Through daily radio programming on more than 600 partner radio stations, Brownfield connects farmers to the news, markets, weather, commentary, and feature programming they need to stay informed. The Brownfield team includes 12 National Association of Farm Broadcasting members. This elite team of award-winning journalists reports on the agricultural issues that impact all farmers and consumers in the Midwest.
I'm Brent Barnett, Brownfield Ag News.
Rhiannon Branch, Brownfield Ag News.
I'm Megan Grabner with the Livestock Market Update on Brownfield.
I'm Amy Simpson with Ag Headline News.
I'm Kellen Havikin on Brownfield.
I'm Mark Dorenkamp with Brownfield Ag News.
I'm Nicole Heslop with Brownfield.
I'm Cyndi Young with Brownfield, and this is my 2 cents.
Hello, this is Larry Lee with the Brownfield Network talking with...
I'm Will Robinson with Agribusiness News.
John Perkins, Brownfield.
I'm Kara Hart for Brownfield.
Every day, the nation's largest farm broadcasting team is on the ground, talking to farmers and newsmakers and covering events. Our team utilizes multiple media platforms to expand radio and connect to your audience. Brownfield offers a unique opportunity to capture target audiences in rural lifestyle and agriculture vertical markets through advertising and public relations opportunities. Content is king, especially content created and delivered by a trusted source. Get your customers' attention and distribute your message efficiently and effectively. From customizable audio messages to digital advertising placements, podcast series development, event promotion, native content creation, and more, your marketing options are endless. Our knowledgeable team of experts can assist you in selecting the right platforms and messaging for your brand, product, or service. Brownfield, the leader in farm radio, your trusted partner and friend for 50 years.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our December Brownfield Tailgate Talk. I'm Cyndi Young with Brownfield, and I'll be your host for the next hour as we hear what farmers' factors they are considering as they make operational decisions in today's environment. We'll talk about their use of biologicals, why or why not, a look back at the 2022 growing season, their outlook for 2023 and beyond, and more. So let's get started. I want to introduce the farmers that we have today. I do want to say that we did have a third. She had some family issues come up, but we're very happy to have the gentleman here that we do today. John Yeley is from Marshall, Illinois. He raises corn, soybeans, and wheat on 3,000 acres in Clark and Edgar counties in Illinois and in Vigo County in Indiana. John is 46 years old and the 5th generation on the current farm, but a 7th generation farmer. John is a board member of the Clark County Farm Bureau and also a board member of American Legion Post 90. So John, say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Our second farmer is Duane Aistrope from Randolph, Iowa. Along with his son, he raises 700 acres of corn, 700 of soybeans, and as he says, a little wheat. The plan is for his son to take over the farm when the time comes. Duane also has an 80-head cow calf operation in partnership with his brother and his youngest son. The total farm is roughly 1,700 acres. Duane is 65 years old and the fourth generation to farm that farm in Fremont County, which is in southwestern Iowa. He is a past chairman of the Iowa Corn Promotion Board, but still belongs to the Grain and Export Committee. He just wrapped up service as a board member on the United States Grains Council, which gave him the opportunity to meet and promote corn with buyers from around the world. Duane is chief of the local fire and rescue, is on his county 911 board and emergency management board, is a township trustee, and serves on his church board. So both of these gentlemen are very busy. And full transparency before we get started, both John and Duane do listen to Brownfield on local radio stations and follow us through our e-newsletter, website, and or social platforms. We're not focusing on media habits in this conversation today, but I favor transparency. So there you go. I want to thank everyone for all of the pre-submitted questions. We'll get through as many of those as we can. I also want to remind you that you can submit questions in the chat section, which is at the bottom of my screen. It may appear elsewhere on yours, but if you have a question, please submit it and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible. We are just going to jump in and get started. So John and Duane, this is kind of a broad stroke question to get us rolling. But regarding row crops, corn, soybeans, wheat, looking back at the 2022 growing season, what worked really well and what will you do differently in 2023 and why? And Duane, we'll start with you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Cyndi, and hello, everyone. The things that didn't work very well for me last year in my growing season was we couldn't get any rain. And I hope that changes for the next year. But generally in speaking, what didn't work, I practiced cover crop quite a bit. And last spring was so cold and dreary that we could not get our cover crop to die, to kill off. So this fall, I broke the mold that I've been in for several years, and I did not put any cover crop down for 1 year and just see. I'll probably go back to it because I can see the benefits of it, but it cost me a lot in yield last year. And the other thing that I'm going to change from last year. Last year was the first year we planted some early Group 2 season variety soybeans. They've done really good in the past 5-6 years around here. And so my son talked me into doing it, and we did it. Well, in July, they looked like it was going to be our best beans because our later beans weren't going to, I was afraid it was going to start aborting pods because we were so dry. Then we got the rains around the state fair time in that area. And actually those Group 2 beans were the lowest of my beans after we finally got the rains. So I may not go quite so crazy on planting that many acres of Group 2s, early Group 2s, but son still wants to give it another year shot, but I said, I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, John, same question for you. What worked or didn't work in 2022, and what will you do differently in 2023?
Pretty similar situation for me. Kind of started out where you couldn't get the rain there in April. Then when it dried up towards the end of April, we rolled it in pretty good, but then opposite in June. After Memorial Day, it didn't rain until well into July. And so we had some issues with the herbicide not holding because we didn't have the moisture to activate it. I had one particular, I can name names, can I?
Yes.
I better not. Well, anyway, I'm going to make a change in my herbicide program for next year. Just the fact that I didn't get good control on the water hemp, and in corn, that's unacceptable because it's pretty easy to kill in corn. We had some issues with nitrogen. I usually use mostly anhydrous ammonia. I've been using a little bit more liquid every year. So side dress, I had to put that on when it was dry. So I don't think I got as much nitrogen in there as I needed to due to the dry weather. Had some variety issues. One variety of corn I planted is 120-day Pioneer. It's been my best every year for the last 6 years. It's kind of getting long in the tooth, but it didn't perform this year, so I'm doing away with that one and changing some things there. But all in all, we had a pretty good crop for what it went through. Corn did really well. The beans were disappointing. Still good, but didn't we had a lot of pods with you have a 3 bean, 4 bean pod with 1 or 2 beans in it. It's not good, So that kind of drug on us a little bit this year. I'm not going to change much of my program. I mean, my program for the most part's proven to work year in, year out. I mean, no big changes, tweaks, because what I'm going to do for next year.
So I know we're not naming names, but when you have a problem with a product, with a crop input, whether it be a herbicide or a fungicide or seed, whatever it might be, what steps do you take in working with your retailer? What are your expectations from the retailer in working with you when you have a product that doesn't work? What does that look like?
Well, if you're buying a fully branded product, you expect them to stand behind it, and in this case they did. And I'll tell you, it was Halix GT is what I used. I've used it once before and didn't like it. And used it last year or for this crop season just because it already had the Roundup in it, and we were concerned about Roundup availability. So that's one reason I went with that product. And I know that a lot of it was due to the dry weather. I have no doubt that's why we had the issue. But I will say that they stood behind the product. They offered respray, took care of the problem. But I still didn't have the control that I wanted. So, but I mean, I expect them to stand behind the product and take care of it, which they did. So I can't complain there.
Duane, how do you deal?
Yeah, Cyndi, basically the same way. We had to respray. They stood behind the respray trying to kill the cover crops, the rye that I had down. And I think a lot of it was due in my bean fields. I had some of my bean acres was really weedy, couldn't control the water hemp. And we resprayed some of them 3 times and still was not happy, couldn't get it. And it hurt the yield too on that in general. But I think it was a lot happened when I put my pre-bean chemical down. It was cold, so that didn't really work very well. And we just got ahead of the program and we used, we resprayed some of the bean acres like 3 times and still didn't clean it up completely. So I know there's a wide amount of seed out there now that I'm going to have to deal with in the future. But like I said, the companies the chemical companies that I worked with stood behind their product pretty well and help with the problem, help absorb some of the problem.
When do you make your decisions for crop inputs for the next growing season?
Well, I've got all my seed ordered. Me and my son sat down and figured out what we wanted to do, what seed we wanted to plant where. I talked to my agronomist about different things that we were going to try. And with that, we sat down with a plan that what seed goes where, what we're going to use, what chemicals haven't been 100% decided yet, but we got a pretty good idea of what we're going to use for the next year. So, that was done. I first started ordering seed. Well, they tried to get me to do it, before harvest. I want to see what products work well, what varieties, what numbers, whatever worked the best this year. No 2 years are the same. So I like to use it that way.
John?
So I kind of make my mind up throughout the growing season. I put out a fairly large test plot on corn every year. I think I had 20 numbers in it, and it's full 1 acre strip. So it's not just a couple hundred feet like a lot of these companies like to put out. So I base a lot of my decisions on my corn based off that trial. And then, I'm always looking for new products. Like I already know what chemical I'm going to use for next year. We did a 40 acre trial with the new corn chemical that I was real happy with. So I'm going to go with that next year. A lot better control. And I was going to tell you too, one thing I am changing next year and kind of incorporates it with this. I've been planting enlist beans with flex beans the last several years. And so this year I'm actually going to go fully enlist. That way I'm not dealing with two different chemical programs. I think the yield's there with them now, finally. So we're going to make that change and make my life a lot easier to come next spring. But I like Duane said, I've got all my seed ordered. I usually try this time of year, November, December, once we get out of the field.
Okay, John froze for a minute, so I'm gonna jump to.
Sit down, like you guys froze.
Oh, there, you're back. You
back.
froze for a minute, John. So
talking to myself.
I have a related question. So I know that you do a lot of trials on your farm. For both of you, what are your main considerations when picking a supplier for your inputs? What are some of the main considerations that you take into consideration? Duane, I'll start with you.
Okay, well, yeah, good question. I basically, how do I want to answer this? I'm kind of tied closely with one company or with one retailer. I did make some switches last year from it, actually, because my agronomist with that company went into another company, and I liked the work he was doing, so I kind of followed him a little bit, somewhat. The decisions that are made, like I say, are done fairly early in the planning process. But like John said, I am switching basically this year to all enlist beans also, is what I'm doing in a way.
How much of that decision is based on that relationship that you mentioned?
Yeah, I like to have a close relationship with the people that I work with, not just on a commercial basis, but a friend basis also. And that weighs a lot into my decision. I take their knowledge, I use their knowledge. They're way smarter than I am when it comes to certain things. But we use a lot of Iowa State figures. By being involved with Iowa Corn, we share as a board a lot of things that we're doing throughout the state of Iowa here, and even with the Grains Council. People in Ohio or Indiana or Illinois. I've got friends all over the country, and we share a lot of things that work and don't work.
So John, what are your main considerations in picking a supplier for your inputs?
Well, obviously, probably the big one these days is price and availability. I was pretty faithful to my local retailer. We have two pretty good ones around home, but I end up going with one almost exclusively just because from the service aspect. I know if I call, the manager's my neighbor, so I know if I call him, he answers his phone every time, and if I need something, it's almost done as soon as he hangs up the phone. So that's something I really look for, the service side of it, when I need something that's going to be done. Obviously, you got some relationships, there that you want to continue to have and work together. But I will say here, like this year when I bought my chemical inputs, I used 4 different retailers because they're all selling the same product, but there's such a wide margin in the price difference. So I told the guys, I'm like, hey, I ain't gonna throw you under the bus for $5, but $1,000 you're going down the road. So that's what I've done. I'm gonna do it again this year. Whoever's got the best price, you got to lower these input costs down as much as you can. So
we just had a question come in that is related to one that I just asked. So I'm going to throw it out there. When and how do you make your decisions on pest control products? John, we'll start with you.
I'm assuming you're talking insecticides or?
Yes.
So that's not really a decision that I do. It's been incorporated in my program for a long time. So it's just, I usually put on like an insecticide. I mean, obviously if you're having a problem out in the field during season, you go out and treat it then, but I've always been putting it on, like with corn, I put it on with my fungicide at tassel, put some insecticide down. And the same thing with beans. I'll put some insecticide when I spray my fungicide on the beans, but it's not something I really make a decision about any time of the year. It's kind of all rolled in that same package, that I do.
Okay, Duane, what about you?
Now, I'm kind of the same way. I don't spray like insecticide on all my acres. I have found that certain varieties respond better to a fungicide treatment, insecticide treatment. So it depends on the year, depends on the pressure, the pest pressure out there. That all my bottom ground does get sprayed. That anything that's down on the bottom, a lot of my hill ground is kind of a hit or miss from scouting, using the agronomists and the scouts that we go out there and we look. And so there's no certain set time. I just know I'm going to do it, and I usually, book some in. When I buy my fungicide, insecticide stuff, it's usually, late spring is when I make the decision.
Both of you have mentioned fungicides. I remember a time when maybe not on fungicides. Is that something that you use every year now?
Basically, I use some every year. Like I said before, I don't treat every acre because I've done trials in the past that it's kind of a waste of money, and other times it's like I say, on my bottom ground, it definitely pays. It gives you better stalk strength. It gives you better dry down, or not dry down because it has a tendency to make it wetter longer. But it just gives me, especially on the fields I know I'm going to harvest later in the season, especially my corn fields, that's going to be towards the end of the season of harvest. I want to make sure that stock's got every opportunity to stand well with the crazy winds we have here in Southwest Iowa.
John, fungicides?
Yeah, that's been a big part of my program for the last probably 7 or 8 years now. And I've the times that I've kind of said, I'm not going to spray it, I've regretted it. We had tar spot come in now. So that's more of an issue, although I will say we had it this year, but it come in really late. And we had very low disease pressure this year, which was surprising. And I did fungicide, everything. I do believe is the one year I probably could have not done it and saved a pile of money. But I've learned in the past that the times I've done it, I regretted not spraying it. So now I just write the check, close my eyes, and let her eat,
Duane, do you have tar spot in your area?
No, I do not.
Okay.
Knock on wood. Knock on wood.
Knock on wood. Yeah, I'm hearing that from a lot of farmers. The questions are flying in fast and furious. I'll get to as many of them as possible, but I want to jump and talk a little bit about biologicals. We had a lot of people submit questions about biologicals in advance, and we had a good conversation about them before we went live. So my question is, have you started to integrate biologicals into your farming operation? Do you plan to in 2023? If you did start doing so, why? And just kind of give us a big picture of what you're doing. And John, we'll start with you because I know you have had great success.
Yeah, I have. So I've been involved with a company called Intent. They do large scale farmer trials. That's kind of how I got introduced to the biological side. So I've been testing them. I can't really talk about the stuff that I've tested for them this year. Some things work, some things don't. I've found two biological products that have done a really good job for me on my farm, and I won't say that they'll work everywhere. Like we said before, I feel that biologicals tend to do a better job on not as rich as soil. So where I'm at, it's a clay timbers type soil. Now, if you go 10 miles north of me, it's the black prairie ground. I don't see the response up, but I do see a response there. It's just not as dramatic. One product I use is called TerraSim. They make a bean product and a corn product. And I did a trial for them. I think it was back in 2020 initially, and 3 different products they were looking at, but I had it over across the board. I think it was a 5 bushel response, treated versus non-treated with that product. And then the one that they actually put into production for this year, it was 8 bushel difference on that. And that's an amazing thing to see. I would have never believed it until I saw it myself. I was very critical of that. Another one I used is Pivot Bio. I think a lot of people talk about Pivot Bio. I did a trial for them last year on their proven, what I call proven 40 now. And we did a 40-acre trial. There's 10 acres that was a 40-pound nitrogen reduction. And it was almost 10 bushel better than a full rate of nitrogen. So that really got my attention for that. So I incorporated that kind of in my program this year. There's another product. It's not really a biological. It's more of a biological stimulant that you spray on with your, it's called Source. You spray that on with your sprayer pass on your corn, like V4, V5, and that is kind of like caffeine for microbes. So you get better nutrient uptake. It actually gives you about 25 pounds of nitrogen out of that deal. So, you know, when your fertilizer prices are so high and you can spend, that's like $13 an acre and you're cutting 25 pounds of nitrogen, you know, it's kind of nice when you're paying $1 a pound for nitrogen almost now these days. So,
Duane, your experience with biologicals?
Well, I tried some. It's been 5-6 years ago. The first buzzword was out, and I tried some and didn't really tried a little trial tested, half a field with and half field without. I didn't really see much of a yield boost in it to justify the cost. But now with the new stuff that's out there, I haven't done any since then. But I know, especially after listening to John talk, that I think it's coming, and there's a lot more of it being used around, and it's a slow process. I think trying to convince everybody that it really will pay for itself in the end. So I'm sure we're going to do some this year. You know, I'm still on the learning curve of it, so I'm kind of green in this field. But I think it's coming, and I may play a little bit with it this year.
One of the questions that just came in, someone was asking about your crop rotation plans, if you have any corn on corn, and they were also wondering about the number of acres of corn that you have. And I think, Duane, you said you have 700 acres of corn.
Right.
Can you talk about your rotation plans, corn on corn?
Okay. Sure, Cyndi. My rotation is basically a 50-50 rotation, give or take a few acres here and there. I like that rotation. I have done corn on corn before, but it just seems like to me, I get along in my area. Most everything is a 50-50 rotation. I have seen in my area here a few guys that have been fertilizing corn stalks, working with corn stalks and putting anhydrous on. There's going to be a little bit of corn on corn in my area, but in general, most everything is, 50-50 rotation back and forth between the two products. Now my wheat is my little bit of wheat. I've got a whopping 6 acres of wheat that is constantly wheat every year, just because it's on the outskirts of our little town. And we started having a hot rod tractor pull in our town celebration. And so we donate the land for that. So we feed it to wheat and then combine the wheat, put straw up for bedding or feed big bales for the cattle. And that way we've got a place to have our tractor pull. Like I said, I'm just a little bit of wheat.
That works. John, 3,000 acres. What's your crop rotation? Do you do corn on corn?
I've done it in the past. I'm not planning on doing this next year. We're still about 50-50 on that. I planted 120 acres of wheat this fall, mostly just because we can tile it. It seems like we're not getting, this is an exception to the fall. I could have done it this year because it was dry, but you know, most falls we don't have time to get the tile put in because it turns wet. So I went ahead and planted some wheat so I can tile it next summer at my leisure. But we're generally 50-50 on that. I've threatened many times with the way anhydrous prices are to plant every acre in beans. You can get 1,360 of them for next fall. And, you know, you can raise 70 bushel beans. It's awful tempting, but you better sell it ahead of time.
I just had a question come in specifically for you, John. Did you apply the Source on top of the Pivot Bio where you saw the positive results with Pivot?
Not in that trial, because I have that trial I had constraints on what I can and can't do. I did use it this year with Pivot, and I didn't really do any check strips or anything, but I was very pleased with how everything turned out.
Okay, gentlemen, how do you or how do results from university trials play into your seed purchase decisions? Duane?
Well, I do look at the first trials and university trials that we have here. There's a lot of it. Iowa State in my area has a huge test plot here for those varieties. I look at them. I see, and I look it up. I'm not one total company for my seed choices, and I am a dealer, but I still go outside the box. And I look at first trials. I look at trials that the own company, the individual companies run on their own. And so I do use the trials. It's not based 100% by no means on that. But like I say, I do use them, and I think they're a good source of information that we receive from the first trials, the university trials. So, and then like John puts it in, I used to do test plots too years ago, back when I was younger and felt like I wanted to do that. It takes a lot of time to do that. I appreciate that, John, for you doing that. But I used a lot of that in my decision making back then when I done it.
John, do you look at those first and university trials?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Here's why. They're not putting it out in a real field. A lot of them plots are a couple 100 feet long, and they're doing their math to make it look like an acre. And it's probably pretty even soil where they're doing it. I want to see if field's got a lot of variability in it. It's got some problems. I want to see how that's going to perform in the real world, not on some guy's little green test plot. So that's why I do my trial that I do. I ain't going to say it's not on good ground, because I do kind of cherry pick a little bit, but I want to see something in a real world environment rather than, and these, I won't say the universities do it, but all these seed companies, it's kind of funny. You can pick up one from DeKalb, you can pick them up from Pioneer, and hey, guess what? On DeKalb's the best. So the Pioneers are the best, the same numbers. I'll look at it myself.
We've had a lot of questions surrounding nitrogen, whether you use nitrogen stabilizer. John, can you speak to that?
I have not. We saw, like I said before the broadcast, we side dress almost 90%, 99% of our nitrogen on, whether it's anhydrous or whether it's liquid. So there's really no. I know some guys do put on some stabilizer when they side dress. I don't see the benefit for it where we're at, because we're usually doing it in May or June. So I've not used it in the past. I know there's a lot of anhydrous been going on in the fall, which in my area, we're far enough south. I think the guys are kind of crazy for doing it, but I know a lot of them are running in-serve with that. But yeah, not for me.
Duane, what about you?
Yes, like I said, we were talking earlier. My anhydrous is all on except for down the bottoms. Where they had a tendency to flood once in a while. But yes, I put it all in the fall. I do add in-serve to my product. I push to wait for that 50-degree soil temperature to get below 50 and below. And I do use the in-serve. So I do not use, my planter's not set up for in-furrow. There's not too much of that goes on around here. I maybe know of 2 guys maybe that do the in-furrow. It's just not something we do down here in Southwest Iowa. So yes, I'm a believer in in-serve. I've seen it work quite well.
Anhydrous costs in your area, Duane?
Well, last I checked, I think it was like right at 1,500. We thought maybe it would drop a little bit. It might drop a little bit this spring because there's so much put on here. I had mine booked. I booked it last summer for $11.50 a ton. what I booked mine for. The year before, I hated that fall price or that summer prices. No, I'm not paying $800 when I'm used to paying $500 and $600. I drug my feet. I ended up paying $860 the year before, and finally bit the bullet, and then it went on up to $1,500. So I guess it was a good bullet to bite, but still, from the year before that, 2 years ago, it was hard. It was a hard pill to swallow for the price of that to go up so high. And I'm really concerned about the price of inputs going forward, because these prices are not going to stay where they're at forever. I can't see that happening. And if the interest rates going up higher, I am just real concerned about the price of our inputs. I know seed companies last year held back on their price of seed. They didn't increase a whole lot, but this year they've gone up quite significantly.
So with inflation, with those prices, how is that potentially going to change what you do in 2023 and beyond?
Well, like my fertilizer program, I do a lot of grid sampling and building soils. And last year and this year, we're just kind of maintaining, we're putting back what we removed from the soil. Pick out a yield per acre I'm shooting for, and we fertilize according to that. The day of building soil up a little more with the prices the way they are, I have backed off that program, and I hopefully get back on my long range plan of fertilization for my soil within the next couple of years. But it's all a guessing game right now, because with interest rates climbing, that's going to be one of the main concerns that people are just going to try and get by with what they can to raise what they expect.
John, what are your feelings on that, looking into 2023 and beyond with inflation, interest rates?
Very similar to what he said. I've kind of held back a little bit on my fertilizer the last 2 years because of the prices, and I thought last year was bad and this year was way worse. Like with anhydrous, even I got a bulk tank at home. I can hold 2 semi-loads. Well, I looked up what I spent 2 years ago when I filled that tank in that December, and it cost me, I think it was $18,000 for 2 semi-loads. And now 1 semi-load's costing you $30,000. So it's kind of crazy. You got to have it. So you're kind of over a barrel, to say. And that's my concern going into next year is that something's going to have to give one of these days. And I'm afraid that we're going to have all this really expensive inputs bought. And then if the market tanks, you still all these high input prices and nothing to help pay for them. And that's going to put some guys in some trouble. I mean, it won't take long to do it, I think.
So during this environment, we'll call it, the economic environment and everything else that's going on out there, how do you look at equipment purchases? Are you on a plan, a rotation plan, anything along those lines? What are your plans there, John?
I was fortunate enough to have pretty updated equipment before all this started. I did do some trading this fall, just because I had some pieces that needed replaced and they kind of irritated me this fall. But the price of equipment is absolutely insane right now. There's nothing that really, if I had to go out and buy a new tractor, I'd be really shy of it, with the way things are. But here's a good example. I traded a grain cart here. This has been the third season on the one we have. Traded the one when I traded for it, they gave me in trade what I get for that cart, and it was 16 years old. It cost me $40,000 to trade to this new cart. Well, that cart that I traded for, I'm not going to mention the brand, but it's been disappointing. Broke down a lot this year, and I shouldn't have done that with 3 seasons on it. So I traded it, went back to the brand I had before, and it's going to cost me $33,000 to trade a 3-year-old cart to get a new one. So you look at, I'll trade a 16-year-old cart off for $40,000, and I got trading a 3-year-old cart off, and it's going to cost me $33,000. So I mean, the way they got this stuff inflated is just crazy. And I will say everything I've bought since 2020, the manufacturing on it has not been up to snuff. A lot of things I've been really disappointed with the quality control.
And John, are you brand faithful? Or do you shop
Pretty
around?
much. We're almost all John Deere. I do own a Massey tractor to mow with, and that about put my dad in the hospital. He about died when I brought that thing home. But he said he'd never drive it, and I said, yes, you will. We're pretty loyal to John Deere, although I say, like I got approached by the case dealer here the other day. So there's big incentives if you want to go red. I said, shoot me a price. I don't care. I mean, there's a reason they're in business. It's all good equipment. I don't care. Show me the money.
So what will it take to get you to change brands?
Well, at this point in the game, I mean, it would have to be just a heck of a deal, because to update that much equipment all at once, it would be a big chunk. And with the interest rates the way they are, it's not real exciting either. So, although I remember when I bought my first farm back in 06, I had 7% interest on my land loan back then. So people are freaking out, but we've been here before too.
Duane, what about you? Equipment purchases? Are you holding back? Do you have a plan?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. If you want my son to talk, yeah, we need to trade stuff. But when dad talks, it's how you going to pay for that? Like John said, the price of this machinery is just crazy. I mean, there's no way it should be where it's at today. And so, yes, I bought a new corn head this year. I was kind of scheduled to buy one, and I used to have a schedule when I traded stuff. Well, in the last three years, that has gone completely out the window. I try to run things a little longer, and workmanship, like John said. Some of the stuff, new stuff coming out, there's a lot of bugs to work out in some of this stuff. So yeah, I am not sold one color. I have red, I have blue, and I do have a few green ones. Actually, I ran my neighbor's new green one, putting in hydrous on this year. He got done before I even got started, and he goes, "Well, heck, don't hook up a machine, just use ours." Well, it's fun running something new, and so but a lot of that goes a long way. I mean, you can't afford this stuff the way the interest rates are going right now. I know I'm scheduled to trade combines this year, but it's not going to happen this year because of the way things are. Yeah, they'll give me a good price for mine, but to turn around and buy to replace it is going to cost me twice as much as it really should. So, you can buy a lot of parts, but then again, it used to be you pay the parts to fix the old machine, or you make a payment, which is kind of a wash. Anymore, it's not that way. You can put a lot of parts in a machine if you can get them. Now that was another struggle I had this fall.
Supply chain issues. We had over the course of the past year, a year ago, when we had this tailgate conversation with farmers, one of their biggest concerns going into this crop year was around supply chain, inability to get everything. So how have you had any specific issues on your farm due to supply chain, Duane?
Yes. Actually this year with my bean head, son was running the combine and was opening up a new field, and somebody along the highway had cut a tree that was left about a foot sticking up in the air and buried right along the edge of the field. And he did not notice it, and he just turned a corner to go the other direction, and he caught that. Well, I was down 15 days waiting for a part for that bean head for him to come. to get it. It broke several things on the head, and then there was one piece that I had to finally take to a machine shop and refabricate it to make it work. So there is some supply issues out there. I know last spring we had a little trouble with the GPS stuff. I had a globe go bad on one of the tractors, and they ended up taking one off an old combine to put on my tractor. It was the old style, but it got me back in the field of planting. Let's put it that way.
John, supply chain issues for you?
I didn't really have any this spring. I did run into some similar things this fall. Dad clipped a guardrail. Some car wouldn't get over far enough, and he clipped a guardrail with the sidewall of the tire, blew that on the combine. And there was only one in the entire United States, and it was down in southern Tennessee.
No.
Fortunately, we didn't lose a ton of time. We lost about a day and a half on that. And the other thing we had is a bean platform as well. I hope there's somebody from John Deere listening, because I could really complain. There's a little tensioner rod that's like this long on the outside of that draper belt, and one of them broke. And we looked at the other side, and it was about worn too as well. And it ended up ruining the belt on the combine, or the head rather. Called Deere, none in existence. John Deere didn't have any. I did find them up in Indiana. It's an hour and a half drive to go get two of them. And then I had to drive an hour back over in Illinois to get the belt. So, I mean, that was a half a day wasted driving. But what really chapped me was that rod that I got. And here's where I'm coming to John Deere. That rod is this long, it's a 1/2 inch diameter with a little tab welded on the end of it. And it was $250 a piece. Now that couldn't have cost 50 cents, I'll end my rant there.
Yeah, it's okay. This is a free zone. We want you to say what's on your mind. I'm going to jump to another topic. I had a lot of questions in advance about no-till and cover crops and regenerative practices, soil health. What are you doing, John, on your farm in regards to soil health and any of those practices I mentioned?
I do a little some no-till. I no-till some beans. I think I did 500 or 600 acres of no-till beans this year, and I actually prefer to do it on beans. It's pretty easy. Saves a pass over the ground, especially with the fuel prices the way they are. I've played a little bit with cover crops, not a ton. It seems like with the years that we've had, it's been. As a matter of fact, I put some out this year and laid in dry dirt. And they didn't really get a good head start by the time it turned cold. And that's the trouble we have a lot of years is timing, put them on with good timing on the cover crop side. So it's kind of hard for us to incorporate them here at least. But that's really the only thing that I do. We try not to do a lot of tillage, especially on anything that's got any roll to it. We leave that unworked in the fall, trying to keep erosion down.
Okay. Duane, I know you're a no-tiller.
Yes, I am. Been no-tilling for God knows how long time. And I first started when it was the new buzzword out, and trying to change my old 4-row planter over to no-till. At first I did it without doing anything, in the bean stubble, planting corn in the bean stubble, and then grew from there. Now we're basically 100% no-till. I'm a definite believer in soil health. We have miles and miles of terraces and waterways up here in our hills. We have some tile ground down on the bottoms. And this year I did put in a bioreactor, which was the first one in my area. I put that in, but we're so dry. I've been wanting to test the nitrates. The bioreactor takes the nitrates out of the water. The tile lines drain into this filter system and then exits back into the creek. And I've been I got nitrate tests. I'm going to test with water coming in, the water coming out. Well, I've been so dry. There's no water on either end yet. So, but yeah, I'm a definite believer in soil health, water quality. Farmers have taken a big hit over the last 10 years, about pesticides and fertilizers, nitrates, stuff going down the rivers and stuff. So, I mean, we've got to take care of our soil health and our water. We drink the same water anybody else does. So, we want to make sure that my generations down the road, whoever is here after way gone, that they have the same beliefs and try to take care of everything, because you only got so much topsoil, and if it all washes down the river or blows away in the wind, it won't be nothing left, So that's why I'm a full believer. I know my grandfather would probably roll over his grave because I don't use a moldboard plow and roll everything upside down. But I mean, I spent many hours in those days doing that as a kid. But so yeah, I am definitely a believer in it.
Okay, John, carbon programs, good, bad, ugly. What do you think?
Honestly, I'm not that familiar with them. It's kind of confusing. You get talking to these people on how these programs work. I know it's a thing that it's evidently going to be the way of the future. But at this point, I'm not enrolled in anything. So.
Duane, how about you? Carbon
well, no, I do not partake in any programs yet. I had some friends that on the corn board with me that looked into it, and I'm not going to mention the company, but they sent the paperwork to them to fill out, and it was like the old Sears and Roebuck catalog. There was like 10,000 pages of stuff to fill out, and basically what it all boiled down to, I'm already doing the things on my farm. I'll go back to what my grandpa used to take the moldboard plow. If I moldboard plowed everything, then I could then start no-tilling again. That would be, a good program. But right now, there's nothing out there that rewards you for what you've already done that you've been doing ahead of time. So, and I, like John says, I think it's coming. Once they get the program figured out, whatever company does it. I know National Corn has looked into it quite a bit. And so, until there's a standardization of the program, I think it might be coming, but right now there's too many hoops to jump through, and they're penalizing the guy that's already doing things that are part of the program that won't get paid.
I'm going to jump to another question. I have so many questions here. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them, and we appreciate your sincerity and your answers. Somebody asked, do you value equipment that all works together? Would you invest in complete systems, or are you okay with different pieces?
Like different brands of
I think they're talking about equipment that talks to each other from a GPS standpoint, technology standpoint.
Yeah. Boy, I'm probably the old guy here on the Zoom here. I get confused with a cell phone sometimes. So, we do run computers and stuff, and everything is logged as we're driving. I use Climate. This is one I use. This is the same one, but I do use them. Everything is recorded that way, uploaded up into space, whatever. For one piece of equipment to talk to another piece of equipment on my farm, I can't see where that would be an advantage for me right now. Like I say, I'm kind of a smaller farmer. But if you out there in a big field, my biggest field is maybe 100 acres is my biggest field. But so there's not several pieces of equipment running in the same field at the same time. So if I'm understanding the question right, I can't see where that would benefit me at this time. Now, my tech son, when he takes over, it may be a totally different picture.
John, what about you?
Yeah, that's one of the things I do like that John Deere does get right. And I've done. I'll give you an example. I had a John Deere tractor with a case planter. That was my first time I was running two planters, and to get them things to talk to each other was kind of a hassle. I mean, it worked, but it didn't work great. So it's kind of an advantage when you can, all your equipment's the same and they'll talk to itself. That is something that's very handy for me. And I will say, like with John Deere's they have that mobile app, and I can pull up on my phone and I can see what all my tractors are doing and the combine's doing in real time, watch them. So I can spy on my dad when he's in the combine, and I can change the settings in the combine from my phone, which is kind of nice because he likes to punch buttons. So yeah, I think in my situation, it is nice to be able to keep an eye on things and know that the machinery is going to communicate properly to each other. For me, that's a big thing.
One of the questions that I've had several people ask: how do you want to receive information from companies? Talking about direct communications, do you want to receive it via email? Do you want it through old-fashioned postal service? How do you like to get information from a company?
I like email or actually the mail is fine too. I don't particularly like to be called, and I really hate being texted. I think texting is the worst way in the world to do business. And the other thing is, when people call you, leave a voicemail. If I don't answer the phone, I cannot believe how many people call for business and don't leave a voicemail. So that's just me. I'm kind of old fashioned a little bit.
I have a feeling Duane's going to say the same thing.
Yeah, I'm old. But,
I'm not saying you're old. I just think that
old
you
fashioned.
probably feel the same way.
Yeah, I email is probably the best way. That way I can look at it when I can. I know we're more in the digital world now. I still get the farm magazines, my farm journal, most of the Farmer and Balls Farmer, all them. I still get them, and I get them by e-letter too, so or email. And so it seems like I don't have a lot of time like I used to sit around and read a magazine. But if I'm out there in the field and I got 5 minutes till I'm at the other end of the field, I'll bring something up on my phone and look at it and read an article or something like that with an email. But like I say, I'm kind of old fashioned, and when I do get a chance, I like to sit in an easy chair and thumb through farm magazines.
Well, gentlemen, we are coming down to only 3 minutes left, believe it or not. I told you that the hour would fly by quickly, and it certainly has. I want to give each of you the opportunity to just kind of take a look at not only what keeps you up at night, but what you are optimistic about in agriculture going into 2023 and beyond. So the dark and the light. And Duane, you can start.
Okay, thanks. The good and the bad and the ugly is what I want to call it. I lay there at night thinking, right now it's the price of stuff. I like where the prices for our commodities are right now, but then again, will that price stay there forever? The inputs are really high, and that bothers me a lot. That keeps me up, and our marketing of our grain, is that buyer overseas going to be there forever? We raise a lot of crops here in the United States. We feed the world. So we got to continuously open new doors in other countries, try new avenues for our products to be moved, whether it's here, we find a new ethanol or something along that line, for our own use. But yeah, it bothers me to think, gosh, is my grandson going to be able to take over this farm and make a living? My wife works, she's a manager of a bank, and we couldn't have kept farming through the 80s and, back then without her off farm income. And so, yeah, those are things that keep me up, and things are looking good right now. I just hope they continue to look good for the future.
John, what about you?
My answer is going to be basically a carbon copy of his. The high input prices, that's scary. Yeah, we got great prices on the crop. And I'll add that I'm actually meeting with my accountant tomorrow morning, but I will say that I probably grossed the most money that I've ever grossed off the farm. But at the end of the day, I probably made less money than I did in, say 2020. Just because I just feel like you're just handling a lot more money. So you're not getting that nice reward that you normally get from having a good crop and good prices. You're just passing the buck down the road. That's what really concerns me going into next year. I know we can do everything right and put the crop out, but you can't control your prices. And that's, I always love putting the crop in and out, but it's everything else that makes me lose my hair.
Duane, John, thank you so much for joining us and your candid conversation. I want to thank all of those people that we can't see right now that have been watching us during this past hour. We really appreciate the opportunity to offer up this quarterly tailgate talk with farmers, and we'll look forward to doing another one in the first quarter of 2023. In the meantime, I wish all of you a happy holidays. Duane and John, I know you're planning for the 2023 cropping season and it may be early, but I wish you a productive and safe 2023 season. So again, thank you. On behalf of everyone here at Brownfield, I'm Cyndi Young.